Hey guys, Selwyn again from WynnStrength.com on my training vlog for Phase 1, Week 4 of THOR'S Power Program, the strength template created by the Australian strength coach for Hafthor Bjornsson to train for World's Strongest Man. Day 0 is not listed in the program. I found a stone in the desert and brought it home, so I'm lifting it today. I put it on the scale. This stone weighed 135 pounds approximately. And this is the first time I've ever attempted lifting stones. This is definitely not in the program right now. It ends up being part of the program in Phase 3, so it's kind of cool. I did find a rock when I went out to the desert randomly. But as part of the program, it's not, so I did just a couple of lifts. I also did some chin-ups and push-ups here just to add some GPP to the day. This is a very awkward movement. I mean, obviously, it's only 135 pounds, but it, just because of the manipulation of the rock, trying to get that under the shoulder, it's such a different movement. And it's quite gassing, because having that stone just anywhere in front of you just stops you from being able to take in a deep breath, and you're pretty much tense the whole time trying to lift it up. So, even just resting in a catch position there just makes lifting this really difficult, because you're kind of out of breath, especially if you do some cardio beforehand or do a couple of extra movements to get that breathing kind of elevated. It definitely increases the challenge of picking up a stone and putting it to the shoulder. I wasn't confident enough to do a stone to overhead press, so I was just doing it to the shoulder there, trying to get used to it. That's a cool movement to kind of do, and I watched the stone lifting video on Netflix, which I highly recommend, part of the Rogue series that they're doing. But if you do it, doing just such a light stone like this adds so much depth to the understanding when you actually watch that little 1-hour documentary about the historical stones people have lifted in different countries around the world, and how much it ties into their history and culture. But those stones are incredibly heavy, especially when compared to this, and it just gives you a respect for how much effort actually goes into picking up stones. It's not like picking up a barbell where the weight is perfectly shaped to fit in your hand and to grip. Picking up a stone is just this unnatural object, even round or oddly shaped, especially the ones that are smooth. This one has a couple of places where I can throw my hands in that I get a good purchase on, but those stones where it's smooth or round, it definitely adds a huge aspect to it. And hearing the numbers that they have on those stones, like 200 to 300 pounds a stone, is just mind-boggling, when this 135 pound stone is so awkward and so odd to pick up to your shoulder, especially when it's quite easy to, say, deadlift or clean 135 pounds on a barbell. But once you add it into this odd mass that has weight in different areas and throws you off balance, it's incredible to see those people, what they do. I'm also trying to be very gentle here and dropping it, because I'm not too sure how long this stone is going to last. I think it might be sandstone, so I have a feeling it's brittle. I already broke a little piece off in transportation, and then in even just putting it on those foam mats. I got some stone dust, as it were, so this stone might not last that long. I might have to make another trip out to the desert here, but very taxing. The reason I include this is I think the few times I lifted the stone up really affected my performance with the squat and the deadlift later on this week, because they felt incredibly heavy. And here we go for the final stone lift for the session. Although what's great about this, you don't really need chalk, because the stone appears to just like absorb the moisture from my arms. I found resting it there and getting a better purchase to be really good. Here is where it really, that's the difficult part, holding it right there, because I can't breathe. It's like something's pushing back against my entire torso, stopping me to breathe. and then awkwardly sitting that back down as gently as I can. That was a tough day. So here we go to first day of the actual template, squats and legs. So just like the other 4 weeks, doing the SSB squats right here, I've got 365 on the bar. This weight was feeling incredibly difficult. It was coming up slowly, but at least I am still getting the depth. The balance is still an issue. I did find out how to hold my hand, so that's really a good benefit. I think the knees are still caving in just a tiny bit. But because of that weight, I did have to drop down to 360 pounds for the third set, and I will reduce the weight even more on the final 2 sets. So the stone lifting the previous day really taxed just everything. I think there's just a lot of fatigue across the whole body because I didn't realize how much lifting a stone to my shoulder would actually take out of me. But nevertheless, the squats are looking better than they ever have been, I think, especially for the SSB. I'm still thinking my movement pattern and technique isn't the best here. And here we go, 355 last set. Setting up, I am glad to not have to do these next week. I was getting sick of the safety bar squat as the main squatting motion. I do miss doing a regular squat, so I am looking forward to squatting with a regular barbell next week. Probably the longest time I've gone without a regular heavy squat in my training program. This was 4 weeks without touching a straight barbell on high, low bar squat, unless you count those front squats I did the other week. I don't think they really count though. So we have some more Bulgarian split squats with the elevated rear leg. These ones are feeling great. I actually don't mind these after the 4 weeks. It's cool to get a little pump in the quads and get that nice stretch in the rear, in the elevated leg, the quad of the elevated leg. Feels really great coming down. It does definitely feel exhausting. And the final set is the single leg calf raise. Here I'm standing on the a bumper plate just to get that full stretch. I have been more cognizant to get a full range of motion, well, fuller, so I'm trying to tap my heel onto the floor before I go up, and then at the very least hit horizontal with the foot. I know at the first couple of reps, very full range of motion, and then as the set goes on, you can see the heel getting lower and lower and lower on the raise. So now we move on to day 2, which is vertical push and pulling. I like this nice superset here. I really think it's been driving up my overhead press a lot. Here we are with just regular overhead presses coming up pretty smoothly, I think, except for that last one. Got a little out of balance there, but not too much, not as much knee bend as I have been performing in the past. So I'm really trying to focus on keeping the lower legs straight. And here we have some weighted chin-ups at 10 pounds. I'm really enjoying the weighted pull-ups again. Haven't done those in years. So that's feeling really good. Getting a nice stretch in the lats, and I think that's really helping to bring up the musculature in the entire back. Here we have another angle, more straight on. It's the first couple of reps, I'm really impressed with the form of my lower back. I'm used to seeing my lower back kind of arch inwards a lot, and it does that towards the end and when it gets heavy, but at the very least at the first couple of reps, the back stays a lot more straight than it has been. Again, some supersets with a 10-pound weight, about 8 reps, I believe. Again, I think the weighted chin-up is really great. Well, the weighted chin-up and pull-up varieties are really great for, I think, arm growth as well. Here we go. First high incline press of the, well, first working set, 155 pounds. These are still feeling not as smooth as they have been. It feels weird not being able to move my head out of the way, so I'm really watching where that weight goes. I'm a bit more paranoid about hitting myself in the face here, just because I can't move my head back. Unlike those other seated upright presses at the gym where it's like a half chair, I can kick my head back. And here we have some pendlay rows, 185 pounds. A lot less, I guess, body movement and hip drive coming in here. But again, I'm under the camp where I'm not too concerned with the body English and the momentum in a pendlay row. I had to drop the weight for the high incline press, just not feeling as strong. But these ones are definitely moving a lot better and smoother. I prefer to drop the weight rather than let the technique slide down and grind through the reps, just because I don't think that's very productive to lifting. I think you're better off dropping the weight, continuing out with that volume, and driving out that volume and letting the form really hold better than it would be if you're sloppily just trying to push the weight up. Because remember, at the end of the day, we're building up the body rather than tearing down the body. And whenever we get too close to RPE 10s or failure, it's not productive to building the muscle up and really adding that extra work that we need to have in the sets there. Now, do I think you should never train to failure? No, I think training to failure does have its purpose, especially if you're in the world of, say, bodybuilding and you're really trying to get huge amounts of volume in. Whereas when you're trying to look at strength development, it's not absolutely necessary, I don't think, from what I've read. In fact, it's a lot better to not train to failure whenever possible, especially if you're beginning. If you're just starting there is absolutely no need for you to train to failure whatsoever or to test. I've heard Sebastian Arm say that he doesn't want his beginning lifters to ever test their 1 rep max in the first year, so there's that. Now we go on to day 3, deadlifts and their accessories. I did not have to split up this day, so we have all the exercises in one. This is another movement I'm really happy to be finished with. The snatch grip deficit deadlift has not been my favorite workout or my favorite movement pattern at all. Again, like the squatting, I'm glad to go back to a regular conventional deadlift. That's the one thing I kind of don't like with the program, is the lack of squatting and deadlifting in the conventional fashion. So whether that be a high or low bar squat, but just a straight barbell squat and a regular deadlift off the floor. It feels like the safety bar squat and the deficit deadlift, the snatch grip deadlift, are great accessory movements, but I don't believe they should be the main squatting deadlifting pattern that you do. For the 4 weeks, I just miss doing a regular deadlift, and I'm really not enjoying that wide grip. I know it's building up the back. I understand the reason for it. I'm just not enjoying the movement. Again, you can see the hips shoot up right before the barbell lifts the ground. Not a full rep there. Getting a deep breath at the bottom, at least. The upper back is staying tight. If you watch the angle of the back, after that initial hip movement, the back angle doesn't change or become more horizontal. It only ever becomes vertical after that initial hip drive. I could stand to use more leg drive to initiate the lift. Here we have some more lightweight good mornings, 135 pounds for, I believe, 8 reps. So keep them nice and slow, nice and smooth. I don't go to horizontal. I do try and increase the range of motion. So here I'm trying to go a little bit lower than I normally do, keeping that stretch, keeping that lower back kind of locked in place, which is, I think, the biggest point of a good morning. You definitely want to keep the entire back structure as locked in as possible. If it wasn't directly after deadlifts, I would prefer not to use a belt, but because of the volume here, I just want to use a belt because it just feels better for the lower back and whatnot. And here we have the superset with the Romania deadlifts, 140 pounds. The reason it's 140 is because I left the 2.5 pound chain plates in the middle there, if you can see that on the inside of the weights on the barbell. Because the deadlifts were a straight weight without the 5s, I put those 2.5s rather than having to take them on and off after every weight change. Again, just like the good morning, I think with the Romanian deadlifts, one of the biggest things you have to remember is to keep that lower back and the entire upper back as tight and as tense as possible, bracing yourself to hold that weight. Not necessarily for, I mean, it's great for supposedly protecting the spine, whether movement causes movement causes injury is a whole nother debate in and of itself. But I think just training yourself to keep the entire back rigid is great for every single lift you can possibly do, especially more so here when the angle, the moment arm away from your hips is huge. We're trying to create a much bigger distance between the barbell and the middle of your foot, so your center of gravity is much more forward. So in cases like that, I really think keeping the back locked in is way more important than, say, a squat you can get away with because the weight generally stays over the middle of your foot for the entire movement, whereas with the good morning, it shoots that weight forward and you have so much weight wanting to tip you away forward rather than stay in the middle of the foot. Here with the lighter weights, I am able to get a little bit lower on the Romanian deadlifts, I find. So they're coming midway up to the shin, almost touching the ground. So this is almost a stiff leg deadlift. And now we move on to day 4, horizontal pushing and pulling. This is, along with the vertical pushing and pulling, I think these are the two big strengths of the program. Keeping the overhead press, keeping that bench press, it's really driving up volume. I think my press and bench have gone through the roof. They feel way more stable than they ever have. They're feeling great technically. They're feeling great strength-wise. I'm able to push out a lot more volume and intensity on both of these movements, and that's including supersetting them with the back movement. Whether that's part of it or whether it's just the sheer volume and intensity I'm doing with the regular movements here, I think the huge strength of this program is the pressing component. Being able to really drive up those numbers. I probably have said that for the last 2 weeks now, but I really think that's where this program and template shine, is helping you drive up that bench. Focusing on that technique, really, I found watching his Instagram is really great because he does put some great tips for how to initiate the bench press. Keeping that arch, explaining why you want the arch, pulling the scapulars towards the butt so that you're trying to put your armpits in your back pockets. That's pretty much the universal cue he uses for a lot of his lifts. And here we have the pendlay row from a front angle. So again, you can see that there's a lot of hip drive to initiate the movement, but I think it's great for what it is, which is to get a little bit of a pump in the antagonist muscle for the bench press, but mainly as an accessory movement for the deadlift. And here we have a low incline bench press. My shoulders just don't like touching the chest on these. Now you can see my butt start to drive up. I think it does leave the bench in a couple of reps here. But again, this is just feeling great for the stretch and the top, and getting that volume in feels amazing. Even though my face didn't say that. And then we've got the superset here with just some banded pull aparts, or face pulls I should say. These are some nice little breather movements for some recovery, some shoulder health. Again, it'd be nicer if I did have it'd be nice if I had a cable machine, or even just a different band to use, a stronger band. I think I've had to go up to 12 reps or so in order to get that done. And there it is, wrapping up the first phase of THOR'S power program. What are your thoughts? I have weeks 1 through 4 posted up. Next video is going to start off a new phase 2, which is kind of cool because I get to go back to regular squats. I'm really excited about that. I'll leave all the links below. Check out my training blog where I actually write up a weekly overview of the program. That's WynnStrength.com. I'll leave in the links for both the program itself. I do have some new apparel, so check that out. Hit that like, subscribe. Also comment what your thoughts are about the program, how you think you would change the program, what you would do differently, and any feedback you might have, whether I have like a really bad squat, really bad bench. I would love some constructive feedback on that as well, if you want to. Thanks again. This has been Selwyn from WynnStrength.com on my training vlog for Thor's Power Program.